Hello and welcome to That Interview Show. In this episode I'll be interviewing Karen Horsley, aka Kaz, my old tutor from Swinburne. It's taken a while for us to actually get around to filming this, to multiple occasions of COVID and, you know, all the rest of that kind of stuff happening, and Christmas holidays and yada yada yada. Not to mention I've been hit by quite an abundance of sunburn, so you'll most likely notice that on screen, so nothing to be concerned about. It's a slow healing process, and I will be using sunscreen next time. Thank you for the suggestion. But yeah, in this video we'll be chatting about her development in media and communications and studying and teaching film, as well as just chatting about David Lynch and what we think of films these days and our favourite films and all the like. So just a good old chat between two old mates. So hope you enjoy, and enjoy the video. Now the awkwardness of remembering how to do an interview. I haven't done that in a while.
Oh,
but
okay,
like,
that's all right. I'll just follow your lead.
We can just make it like a more casual chat.
I've done a lot of interviews, but yeah, so yeah. I'm fine. But as long as you can, you know, fix it later to take out all the shit,
yeah, no, of course,
the rubbish that is.
I always film an intro like after the fact.
Yeah,
so to
good idea.
Who both of us are and whatever.
Yeah,
so.
yeah, no worries. Okay.
Yeah, I'll grab my water bottle because I'm bound to get dehydrated.
I'll try not to jiggle my leg too much. That can be distracting.
Yeah, that's right.
I tend to jiggle.
It's alright, I'm going to be shaking with my left hand for most of it.
Is that because of the sunburn?
Yeah, and I'm nervous. I haven't filmed an interview in a long time.
Oh, okay.
It just presents itself as like, this is a formality now. I'm like, oh,
yeah.
Right, this is meant to be a formal. I'm like, I don't know, I don't like.
Nah, just make it really casual. I talk on ABC radio a lot, and it's like, yeah, you just kind of, I don't know, yeah. You just get into it. Yeah. But you can do whatever you do, and I'll just wait, and you can just introduce me, or you don't have to, or whatever. Yeah. However you want to do it.
Yeah. All right, well, I guess we'll get started.
You got a list of questions in your head?
Vaguely. Kinda. Like, we can start basically talking about you and, like, your study with film and media and whatever, what you do here at Swinburne, then we'll just kind of chat about other stuff. If it's anything you don't want to talk about, we'll just skip a question. And
my agent told you not to ask that question. And then I'll just like pull off the mic and walk off. No.
And yes, and then we have a reserved 45-minute special just talking about David Lynch. So.
Oh yeah, I love that.
So yes, I guess we'll start.
Yep.
Hello, welcome. This is That Interview Show. I've got back with that all weird names I have for shows. But yes, this is Karen. We know I call her Kaz.
Kaz is fine.
Kaz is fine. We're friends. It's one thing that I don't think most people think about when it comes to your lecturers or tutors, is to be friends with them. Like, I don't know, like, because we met each other in 2017 in one of my first classes. This is one of those classic Friday afternoons at like what, 4:30 was it, or it was between like 3:30 to 4:30 or something.
Yeah.
It's like last class of the day kind of deal, and it was just media studies, intro to media studies.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was a long time ago.
Yeah, and then I know that was a long time ago, and I also remember when jumping right in here, that Twin Peaks: The Return was being uploaded like weekly. It was a weekly thing on, I think it was Stan, and I happened to have an early class somewhere the following day, and you happened to be in the lab that exact same morning. So we'd always have like about a 15-minute chat before I had to be in my tute about the previous night's episode of Twin Peaks: The Return. Yeah. That probably could have gone on for an hour, but I had to go.
Yeah, that's sort of our basic dynamic of what we've like, how we've become friends is basically just through outside of you teaching me is the fact that like most of our classes and most of our interactions were just talking about film. Yeah. Like even just most of those intro to media studies we just talked about film. I don't think most people actually liked that, because it was just like me and you, maybe Guy as well. He would obviously participate, and then him and I became friends, and we're still friends to this day, and we still talk about film every day. So it's like it was a class that just, hey, I like talking about film. We all like talking about film, and that's just kind of how it worked from there. So
yeah, well, whatever. It works for a couple of people.
Yeah, there was. I mean, look, most people didn't like to shop on a Friday afternoon anyway. So
No way.
Yeah, so
trying to make it a bit of fun, talk about movies.
Yeah, unless there was assignments to do, and they'll be like, "Oh, here's the brief stuff about assignments." But So I guess we'll cut into looking at your study and what you teach at Swinburne.
Yeah. Okay. So I teach in a lot of the film units here: screen technology and culture, sound and the screen franchising. Have taught in just a subject called screen studies. I think it's just like a first year one. So yeah, but I also teach journalism. I teach media studies, intro to media, and a few other media units across the time I've been here. And so yeah, that's kind of what I do. My own research is around Southern Gothic television and film, and that's and my book's coming out this year. It's called The American Southern Gothic on Screen. Not a title I chose. The publisher went with it for some reason. But yeah, my...
That's all right. I got at the very start of my shelf under A.
Yeah. My research is really about the Southern Gothic as a genre, I suppose. And I all of my kind of my book which was kind of adapted from my PhD, is really about trying to identify what it is that makes something Southern Gothic. It turns out it's not that easy to identify, unfortunately, but I gave it a good crack. And that includes everything from To Kill a Mockingbird, the old movie To Kill a Mockingbird, up to True Detective Season 1, the one set in Louisiana, shows like Rectify, films like later films. Why can't I think of one? The Skeleton Key, not so kind of recent.
Yeah.
There probably hasn't been anything.
Like 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, there probably hasn't been anything particularly recent, actually, if I think about it. That I'll think of it later, and then it'll be too late. But yeah, those kinds of things. Anything set in the Deep South.
Yeah.
Anything involving racism, hillbillies, voodoo. Swamps and that kind of thing. So yeah, that's my research.
Yeah. What's the one that guy and I watched that you really liked?
Oh.
The one with the guy who plays the banjo.
Deliverance. Yeah, Deliverance is a famous. Famous. Yeah, there's another one similar to that called Southern Comfort, set in I think it's made in 1980. Maybe early 80s. I can't remember that, but yeah, it's a similar kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. About Cajun people picking off these National Guardsmen who steal one of their boats. Very, very funny. Not meant to be, but it's great. Yeah. It's a good watch.
Yeah. So what got you into studying media?
Films? And films. I was one of those kids that my other friends would always say, "You watch so much TV," and I used to think, "Oh, is that a bad thing?" Because I don't know, that was always a criticism. That I really like watching TV, but I talked to a film, quite a well-known film critic about this a number of years ago, and I was kind of asking him, "Well, how did you get into it?" And he said to me, "Well, how did you?" And I said, "Well, when I was really young, I used to sit with the old newspaper TV guide or whatever, some kind of TV guide, and go through it at the start when it came out and circle every film that I wanted to to watch." And so I'd, set the video on the VCR on timer, and I'd be so excited, get up in the morning and I'd tape some obscure horror film or some obscure film that, whatever. And he said, weirdly, he said, "Oh, I used to do the same thing." So we kind of bonded over that particularly because we did the same. But yeah, my dad was actually into film, and I think he kind of instilled that in me and my sister because we both ended up being really big fans. And but yeah, also like a big consumer of media, always have been. And then kind of before I even studied, I mean, I'm a high school dropout, I have to make that point. I got thrown out of school in year 10. I didn't really, and even though that happened, I still would buy movie books. I would read about all the movies. I knew every actor and actress from, especially the classical Hollywood period. For some reason, I really liked that period when I was a teenager, which is kind of weird. I spent way too much time reading about the old movie stars and the old studio system, and then finding those films on television or on, you know, hiring them on Blockbuster or whatever, and then just kind of watching them. So that was just a real kind of hobby. And then when I enrolled in university, like quite a number of years later, the only reason I enrolled in the course was because back in those days, Swinburne had one unit called Cinema Studies. It was one third-year subject, and all I wanted to do was get to that subject. So I was like, what do I need to do Cinema Studies? And they were like, okay, you need to do this and this, whatever. And then, yeah, finally when I got to Cinema Studies, I was just like in my element, like one unit, 12 weeks, 12 movies. And the lecturer, a man called Tom Ryan, who'd been teaching here for a long time, he used to run each semester around, or each time he did the unit, around a particular theme. And the theme that he chose, because he couldn't cover everything in one semester, and the theme he chose that year was called something like Small Towns, Roads and American Dreams. And it was about road movies and movies, and it was like Hollywood. It was fantastic. I just loved it. And thought, yeah, I've just reached the pinnacle of my degree where I've got to third year and I've done this amazing subject. Then I finished my degree. I'd enrolled in an honours course out at Monash, which I didn't never complete. But in the meantime, this lecturer, Tom, retired. And because I was a past student and I was enrolled in a kind of a post-grad thing, one of the people here emailed me or called me, I think, and said, Tom Ryan's retiring. We've got nobody to teach cinema studies, and we know that you did really well in it, and we know that, you know, like, we can employ you as a sessional. Do you want to teach it? And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe they're making me do this. Like, I really thought I don't know enough, right? So I just had to do a whole lot of research and devised this cinema studies course that was really different to what Tom had been doing. It was just like I cherry picked from different genres, and it was meant to be one semester until they found a permanent person. I ended up, I think, being the cinema studies person for something like maybe 6 or 7 years, maybe more. I did it every semester because, yeah. And then, of course, the whole thing changed. They got a screen major here, so that kind of changed everything. So I lost that. Yeah. Anyway, that's kind of my little path. Get kicked out of high school, wait till someone retires, and then get their job. That's
yeah. Yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah. No, it's definitely an interesting pathway, because even for me, like, when it comes to studying film, like, film was never important to me until probably year 11 of high school, and that was just because I wanted to do science and I was doing physics, and in the first week I'm like, this is just too much math. And I decided I want to do something else, and my brother had done media studies the year beforehand, and I'd helped him make one of his films, and so I got into doing that instead. And like, from that, it was like having watched movies for years, because I've been watching them since I was a kid. Even my dad used to do the same thing. We'd circle on the guidebook to say, oh, here's this movie this time. Well, we either had the VHS, we had VHS for a long time, but then, like, you know, you got the DVR and stuff, so we just tape it, and the amount of films that Dad would just introduce to all of us, either through the DVDs or the digital recorded videos that we had, and being like, hey, you guys got to watch this one. Like, because of that, I watched Alien as a 6-year-old, which was
unacceptable.
Well, I mean,
inappropriate.
I wouldn't suggest it to a 6-year-old. Like, personally, for me, scarred me for life. But I love it. It's one of my favorite films.
One of my favorite films of all time. One of the most. It's like just an amazing film.
There are so many films that I look at this kind of stuff. Like, I was watching a review of Total Recall the other day, and this is like the original Total Recall, and the guys were saying how they watched it when they were like 9 and 10 back in, you know, the US, and it was like an R18 film. And I'm thinking to myself, like, I watched it at like the same age, you know, I never even realized it was R18. It's because of all the blood and the guts and that one nude shot. But outside of that, it's like, I didn't consider that stuff as a kid, so getting into a lot more of that stuff now, not just like R18 stuff, but all kinds of like exploded from French cinema to Japanese that all my dad introduced me to.
Wow. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
If you watched Alien for the first time as a 6-year-old, so then as an adult you watched it again, so you must have had a really different experience of it on when you finally watched it as a grown-up.
Well, I mean, I remember watching it throughout my whole life. Like, I watched the first one, and then I think the next year we watched Aliens, and we watched Alien 3, and we watched Alien 4, and then my dad got the DVD set for Alien vs. Predator and Alien vs. Predator Requiem. So I've watched, like, every single year we watched a new Alien film. And then it wasn't until, because I stopped watching them, it wasn't until Prometheus came out, and all the advertising was like, no, it has nothing to do with Alien whatsoever. And the day I went to see it, because I was like so excited, they were like, oh yeah, it's a prequel to Alien. I'm like, fuck. Because I was like, I had my eyes covered over my face most of the film, and this is back in 2012, so even then, even Alien Covenant, a few years later, I was still petrified whilst watching it. It wasn't until maybe a year after Covenant came out that I rewatched Aliens, and it just clicked in my head, like, oh, the aliens are just bugs that are getting killed. They have there's no fear or strength to them because it's only strength in numbers, because it's like my connection to that one film was the thing that broke me out of, oh, this doesn't scare me anymore. I mean, facehuggers are still like terrifying, but like xenomorphs suddenly became just cool. And then the design of them, and now I've got figurines. I rewatch Alien every year. I've got the 4K. It's insanely terrifying, but like I love it. It's just absolutely beautiful to watch. So like it's not like I watched it as a kid and then like 20 years later I rewatched it, I'm like, oh fuck, this is brilliant. It's like, no, I just evolved through my system to like for me to like, you know, defeat my fears of the xenomorph and stuff.
I'm interested because a lot of people who see Alien, I don't know, it might be because I say, you've got to watch Alien, I'm not sure, watch the first one and they go, there's only one alien in it, you know, like where are all the other aliens? and are quite confused by that, you know, probably being more used to there being multiple aliens, and I always think that's the beauty about that film though, the minimalism of it, and the fact that it's really about Ripley against the alien. It's not it's not a kind of, you know, a whole horde of them. It's just those two, and it's kind of like in that way, it's like a Western in a way at the end, you know, it's like the good cowboy and the bad cowboy having a kind of shootout in the main street, it's kind of a bit like that, you know, and I guess, you know, because it's such a genre bending film in so many ways as well. It's got all those kind of cowboy Western elements to it, because everyone on the ship is a bit of a cowboy, but it's also, you know, often talked about as a haunted house film set in space, and I think it really is a haunted house film.
It definitely made me adore the Cabin in the Woods genre like that and stuff, like Evil Dead and whatever. So
creaking, like sneaking in around hallways and hearing something or seeing a flash of something, and you go, oh, that's very much a haunted house kind of aesthetic.
Something that builds on atmosphere. It's one of my favorite like genres of horror, where it's just like purely atmospheric, and that's why I think I've always preferred the first film over Aliens, because it's like Aliens is good, I like it, but it's still just an action film. It's a Vietnam film. Like there's so many other elements to that about it. Like it's still a fantastic film, but just I've always preferred Alien. I think that's why I still like Alien 3 a lot. Like I've watched the assembly cut, which, because the theatrical cut is not great, but they did an assembly cut, which is like half an hour longer, 45 minutes longer. It adds in all these better themes. It develops the characters more. It's like, hey, what if they somewhat made a decent Alien 3 film? And it's very much like the first film.
Right.
So it's cool to be.
And the other groundbreaking thing about Alien that a lot of people may forget is that up until Alien, films about space travel and outer space and all that kind of stuff were often about, where there was often this kind of slickness, a shininess to them. 2001's got this shiny kind of modern, you know, futuristic kind of look about it. In any of those, a lot of those, you know, like 1950s sci-fis often had, there was often this kind of idea of this kind of futuristic thing. But the great thing about Alien is that being in space was just like a job.
Yeah.
And everything was just like, oh God, when are we out of this job's really driving me crazy. They were like factory workers.
Yeah.
They could have been factory workers or production line workers. They were just on a job.
Exactly. They were just
really,
a delivery crew.
yeah.
It's like
And no one had really depicted space that way.
Yeah.
Space was always, wow, wow, wow.
Yeah.
There was nothing
or
to look at. There was
Star
nothing.
Wars, which is wars in
Star
space.
Wars,
yeah.
which was just like so spectacular to look at. This was just like someone's idea of a really boring workplace.
Yeah.
And it yet happened to be in space, and that's what's so interesting about it.
Yeah, so I will note, obviously, this room that we're in, luckily, is actually the room where Kaz and I had we had a David Lynch club back in, was that 2019?
I think it was 2019 because
yeah.
we wanted to continue it in 2020, and then
COVID hit, yeah.
COVID hit, yeah.
But yeah, no, definitely 2020. It was only the first semester.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, because that's when I had met my now girlfriend. I wanted to go to the combine for a session, but she always had work or other classes.
Oh, she never got to come?
No. I don't even think to this day I've introduced her to a David Lynch film, but I'm getting there. I had a week.
Julian.
I had a week at the start of last year where it was like, she was over for a week, so it was like, all right, Aliens, Blade Runner 2049, Lawrence of Arabia in 70mm. I don't care if you think they're boring, they're good films, so... but yeah, so we had the David Lynch Club here, and Kaz and I are big fans of David Lynch, he was someone who I only watched parts of Twin Peaks through, like, some YouTubers I'd watched back in high school had talked about it, and so I watched the first season, and I watched, like, the first couple episodes of season 2, and then did the dumb thing of listened to them and was like, okay, I'll skip to the end of season 2.
Oh, no.
So I had no idea what the hell was going on. I don't think I even watched Fire Walk with Me. I watched like the missing pieces, and I didn't even know what the hell was going on. So it was this whole collage of confusion. And then once I got to first year uni with Kaz talking about it, I rewatched the whole thing and actually watched all of season 2, and then watched Fire Walk with Me, which is another one of my favorite films. And of course, then The Return came out.
And that added another, like there was another collage of confusion with The Return.
Yeah, that was great too, because the first 2 parts came out, I had a fever, so I was like, I don't even know what the hell I was watching. it was like a living nightmare. It was very fun.
Oh, well, yeah, well, I mean, I think it's because we used to meet, it was like very kind of, it wasn't planned. It's just that you happened to be here.
Yeah,
and I needed to talk to someone about it because I didn't have anyone in my house to talk to about it. I mean, I'd go home, I think on that night, I think it was a Monday night when they used to put a new episode up.
I think
the Tuesday, and so I'd go home from work, I'd get home quite late, and then I'd sit down by myself and get ready to watch Twin Peaks: The Return on my own, because my daughter at the time was in high school, and I don't think she wasn't interested. So I'd sit there and then I'd just be like head full of like, oh my God, I don't know what to do with this information. I saw you, and we were able to then vent a little bit.
Yeah.
And then I think I had an intro to media tutorial, and there was a guy in there called David, and David was also crazy about David Lynch. And then I kind of had this idea, and I went to Jess Ballanzategui and said, because I knew she also liked David Lynch, and I said, Jess, I'm thinking of asking a few students to come along to like a bit of a David Lynch club. And she was just like, oh my God, yes, we're going to do it. And actually like went straight online and said that lecture theatre on level 4 is free every whatever day it was. We did it once a week, and we're going to use it, and we're going to have it. And it was just so much fun. Yeah. And yeah, we brought along popcorn and chips and all sorts of stuff. And we showed, I think we showed The Elephant Man. We did Blue Velvet. We did a couple of episodes of Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
The old one, I think.
Yeah, I think we did like the pilot.
Yeah, the pilot. And then, did we do Fire Walk with Me? I can't remember.
No, because I think we only did the pilot.
Yeah.
I think we were going to do Mulholland Drive, but I had just watched it in class that same week.
Right, and I think...
as a genre studies film, so we decided not to watch it.
Well,
because I'd already seen it.
and it's a little bit, it might have put a lot of people off anyway.
It is very, but they're all bizarre in a way. Like
they're all bizarre, but some are less bizarre.
It would have been weirder if we had to watch Wild at Heart, so...
Yeah.
Probably wouldn't have been very
true. So yeah, that actually went on for a few weeks, and we we kind of wanted to keep going, but everything kind of turned to crap. But that was actually really good fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really enjoyed it. It's kind of probably the highlight of 2000. Was it 19?
Yeah. I had a lot of good things happen in 2019. That was definitely one of them.
Yeah.
So a lot of good things. Surprisingly, a lot of good things. Yeah. It's one of those years that for me, I'm like, oh, look, the best year of my life, and everything else has been downhill since then, and everything else was kind of shitty beforehand. So I'm like, it's the peak of what I've hit so far.
Yeah, but there'll be another peak.
Yeah, it'll happen again.
Yeah, it'll happen again.
You know,
might be this year. Who knows?
I don't know. We'll see. We'll see.
I don't know how those things really work, but yeah.
No, it's more or less like a culmination when you get to the end of the year, you realize how good everything's been. It's but at the same time, I was going through that year, I'm thinking everything so far this year's been great. You know? Like I again had met my now partner, like had the David Lynch club. I still had uni every week. I was hanging out with my best friend. There was so much. I had work, so I was still getting money, buying a lot of movies. Suddenly, I had all this, room to buy more movies. So yeah, just it was a good culmination.
I also love that you still buy movies.
Oh yeah, of course.
I know we've had this conversation before, but I love that you actually buy the physical. Because I was in JB Hi-Fi 2 days ago, and I was like, who goes to JB Hi-Fi anymore? Because what do they sell apart from televisions? And a bit of technology. Yeah, like they've still got a half a shop full of DVDs and Blu-ray and stuff.
I fear it's getting smaller, but that's also because depends on which one you go to. Some of them are like, oh, here's pop vinyls, and I'm like, nobody buys pop vinyls at JB Hi-Fi.
That's true. And I also found out the other day that they've started to sell fridges, which
they've had those for a few years now.
I didn't realise that. So I guess they had to fill up the space where they used to have a lot of CDs.
Well, the CDs now has shrunk, but the vinyls has expanded.
Yeah.
So it's like, but the DVDs and Blu-rays is kind of the same. It's usually a 3 to 4 section bay in any single building, and they've also got like those small shelves just around. Like here's like a $10 bin of Blu-rays or DVDs and whatever. So I mean, because I've got a Blu-ray.com app, and you can scan all your Blu-rays and 4Ks. Not DVDs, unfortunately, and I've got well over 1,400 Blu-rays.
Whoa!
And probably an equivalent amount of DVDs.
Yeah.
But I don't own all the DVDs. They're mostly my dad's because he'd bought them from since DVDs started being printed. The majority of the Blu-rays are mine, obviously. I have control of the shelf.
Oh.
Yeah, so there's box sets. Like I just went to JV the other day. I even bought a Ray Harryhausen set. It was like 7 films, and I'm like, I have all these films, but I want this set because it looks really cool. Then it turns out it had the third Sinbad film. I think it's like Sinbad and the Eye of the Tiger. I don't have that one, so I'm like, cool. I'll just try sell off the rest of them because they're worth quite a bit, and I'll just keep the box set for myself. So, because I like old-fashioned stop-motion films as well. Because I think when it comes to film, it's like, if you start kind of discriminating against certain types, it's not worth it to some degree. Like for me, I'm very open to all kinds of films, but the only one I'm not great on is like huge body gore horror stuff, but like in the realm of realism, like say Saw, for example, a film which
that torture porn stuff.
Yeah, I've basically avoided that whole genre.
So have I.
As long as I've been.
I feel like the world is mean enough without having to kind of watch that kind of meanness.
I have the first film on 4K because I got that last year, but just because I'm like, I got into James Wan last year, so there's I got into The Conjuring, I watched Malignant when it came out, and that was like, I loved Malignant, and that was his 2021 film, so like, a lot of people didn't watch that one because of COVID. But so it's like, I don't know, it's just fun. But I think it's also, I guess, kind of in a way because of David Lynch, like watching his kind of stuff where it's like, you go from Twin Peaks, which is a satirical soap opera, with like otherworldly stuff that just keeps on becoming weirder, and then you got the rest of his stuff. I mean, like, I've watched Eraserhead 3 or 4 times now, and it's still an absolutely insane film. But then you got stuff like, there's no normal film except for The Straight Story. I was going to say he has no normal film
except for what?
The Straight Story.
Oh yeah, there isn't. Yeah, I feel like Elephant Man was probably his most normal.
It's like, yes, in terms of like his style of film, because even The Straight Story isn't really his style, but like it has elements. But yeah, that's probably the most normal, but still being just, if it wasn't based on like a true story, it would be very weird. Because it's like, here's this disfigured person in black and white times and stuff.
Yes,
so,
and but it has a pretty classic plot structure, as in it's got as the first it's like 3-act structure, which a lot of Lynch's films don't have. Or, you know, they have little tangents. They're quite tangential. Whereas I think Elephant Man, at least, stuck to the kind of story. All those kinds of things. But I feel like, to me, that's his most, in a way, his most accessible film. Because it didn't really come out of his brain. Yeah. Anything that comes out of his brain is going to be challenging.
Yeah. But yeah, so, I mean, when did you I guess we can talk about David Lynch, because he's like the main thing that's kept us together. Like I've got a lot of friends. I follow a lot of people who really like David Lynch. I still watch his YouTube channel as well.
Oh yeah, right, yeah.
With his weather reports, I'm like, I don't need this because it's LA. I don't go there. I don't live in that country. But yeah, so when did you like discover David Lynch?
Actually, back in, believe it or not, around the time of Twin Peaks, when it was originally aired on television. Back then. And I started... Oh, no, sorry, that's not true. I actually discovered him before that, because Blue Velvet, I think. I saw Blue Velvet before that, and I'd seen Eraserhead as well at the Astor Cinema. And I'd gone there to see it. It might have been a double. Yeah. So it might have been Blue Velvet and Eraserhead. And I was just like, what the hell just happened? What was that thing that I just sat through twice? You know, two movies that were so different, but sort of strangely same. You know, the same in their bizarreness. Yeah. And then there was kind of all this hype around, you know, this kind of weird director's going to be moving to television. And, you know, honestly, directors didn't move to television back in the 80s. It was a very unusual thing for a director to do. It was kind of career suicide for a lot of people. It was, if you were a film director, you know, television was your kind of like poor cousin. Yeah. But Lynch really, really broke the boundaries with that and decided to do, you know, a kind of long form TV series. And we used to have Twin Peaks parties. People would come round, we'd sit, we'd all be like looking for clues to everything, calling each other afterwards and saying, did you see when that sheriff did that thing? You know, like that's got to be a clue. And we'd all be trying to unpack it. Yeah. I mean, I think we were probably tricked a little bit into believing that when Lynch does something in a film that it actually has some kind of effect. Sometimes there's just there's no cause. There is an effect, but there's often no cause, and also the other way around. Sometimes people just do stuff, and it doesn't mean anything. But I think, we thought we were sleuthing it, you know. Anyway, there was season 1, which was just phenomenal, and such a success. By the time the other season was taken over by. Season 2 was taken over by, you know, other showrunners and directors, and people started to lose interest in it. I, however, stuck with it to the bitter end. I was with it. I was not going to give up. Whereas all my friends had just kind of gone, can't be bothered anymore. I was there. So yeah, I love his aesthetic, the stuff he does with sound, the way he tells a story. The way he doesn't tell a story, often you're not getting a story, you're just getting little vignettes. I believe that David Lynch has ideas in his head and he thinks that's a really funny idea. I want to put that into a film. It's not going to have anything to do with anything else, but whatever, I'm going to do it anyway. And that's, you know, a lot of his films have those moments where you kind of think, what's the connection? Yeah. And there isn't one. Yeah. And it's pure surrealist. You know, the term surreal is overused by the AFL because every footballer that comes off the ground, I don't watch football, but I notice this in the media. If you're watching, you know, the news or something and the sports bits come on and they say to some footballer, how did that feel to win that? And they go, it was surreal. I'm like, you don't know what surrealism is if that was surreal. Like, you got to think about rabbits. As you know, a kind of example of surrealism, or Lynch's short film called With the Scissors, and I forget what it's called. I think it's just called Scissors.
I think it is.
Where they're hanging over a theatre and they're just that really interesting. Yeah. So that's surreal.
Or just all of Inland Empire.
All of Inland Empire. It's surrealist cinema,
which is just one of those films where he just had no script and just filmed random stuff. It ended up connecting together through the edit, and it was just bizarre.
Yeah, and if you want a story arc, forget it.
Yeah.
And if you want cause and effect, pretty much forget that too.
Yeah.
These are just, and that's what's so amazing about him, is he's made a career being a surrealist filmmaker, which is, you know, a bloody hard thing to do.
And to be like successful enough at it, like it's kind of, I mean, I can understand why a lot of people like don't get it. Like even like my mum, who's a very general audience member, like even she's seen The Elephant Man and had seen it like sometime after release, like maybe a re-release or whatever, because we get stuff so much later in Australia, or back in the 70s and whatever. So and she was in Tassie too, so it took even longer for her to get it there. So when she finally watched it, like, you know, it was a very like sad film, and like she still remembers it because of that. Like it was so like so powerful. Yeah. And I'm like, and like they even, because I, you know, do my best to try and convince friends and family to watch David Lynch stuff, and like they've seen some stuff, you know, there's like Mulholland Drive, which is normal enough but still weird, you know. I'm like, it's like it's fine for the first hour and a half, but then suddenly it just goes, what the you know? So it's interesting. I think that's like one of like the things about like showing it to my partner. It's like, I don't know which one to start with. Like, do I start like in chronology and start with here's his weirdest shit being Eraserhead, but also here's his weirdest shit being Twin Peaks: The Return, and also here's his weirdest, like.
I would start with The Elephant Man.
Yeah, it's probably a good one to start with. But like, I feel like I don't know, I'd love to show it. I don't think I've shown Eraserhead yet. I feel like I would remember if I had, but I've shown a lot of weird films. I mean, I showed us Suspiria, the original. I'm like, that's not as weird, but it's like, it's still pretty weird. It's like the first time I showed it, I'm like, hey, here's Suspiria. It's like my thing right now, because I had like a phase at the start of 2021 where it was just like, no, this is back in 2019, God, where it was just like, Italian cinema is so fucking cool. So here's Suspiria, and it's like one of the weirdest movies I saw like 5 times in a month, because I just absolutely loved it. One
of those classic kind of what they call giallo films.
Yes,
the yellow kind of
Yes,
yellow
I have a whole collection of giallo films.
Yeah.
So, and I can never get enough, because it's all crazy stuff.
Well, there's something Lynchian about a lot of those too, or it might be the other way around.
Because it's very like, I guess like in the untraditional sense of cinema, like sure, they probably usually have the same kind of plot structure. I mean, most of them are still murder mysteries, unless you go to something more bizarre, like say Demoni or whatever, like Mario Bava and Lucio Bava's films and whatever. But it's like, they still have like a lot of weird practical stuff, a lot of different effects and styles, and always like, especially Dario Argento's films, some of his visual style is like just so different to most of regular America. That's like, it kind of has that kind of like surrealist element to it, just for how it's filmed. That's like, it's just creative filmmaking.
Yeah,
it's just really cool.
That's right. You know? I mean, it's kind of, I guess we might call it art house cinema, and in some ways Lynch is probably an art director, but he's pretty much worked in the mainstream for a lot of his career. Or he's dropped in and out of it, but so he's a very successful art film director, I suppose. Yeah.
I mean, I guess we could talk more personally about your own. Personal, like do you have favorite films?
Unfortunately, my favorite films change all the time, and I can't.
That's the best kind.
But I feel bad if I leave something out.
Yeah.
And so I don't think I'll ever change my mind on Alien. I think that will always be one of my favorite films, and I can watch that over and over again, and I never get to a point where I say, it's dated, it's flawed, it's anything. I just feel like it's in most ways quite perfect. Another film that I can't say is not flawed, but I will never get sick of it, is Blade Runner, the original Blade Runner. There's something about Blade Runner, I don't know if it's the Vangelis kind of score, that sort of slightly melancholy score, just the kind of themes, the way it looks, the fact that, you know, that film was made on a budget. A lot of people don't realise that. You know, a lot of those things that we're seeing that look like these kind of amazing cities with the kind of flare, the flames, kind of they're all models. Like they're models, and it's just crazy to think of that it's been visually inspired. It visually has inspired a lot of cinema post Blade Runner. You know, like just because of the way it looks, but it was all done on a budget. It's just so amazing. I do love that film. I don't know how I feel about Harrison Ford these days, but I can still watch that and forget that it's the kind of grumpy curmudgeon that he became, and that, but I really.
What do you mean? He totally loves Star Wars.
Yeah, I do love Blade Runner. And so those two never drop off my list of favourites. But the others kind of change. They chop and change. I used to have on my top 5 a film, a kind of an existential road film from about 1970, maybe 2 or something, called Tulane Blacktop, which is a film starring James Taylor, the folk singer from the 70s, Dennis Wilson, the drummer from the Beach Boys, and who are 2 guys. One is just known in the film as the mechanic, the other's known as the driver. They basically drive an old Chevy, a 1950s Chevy, across America, and the way they get money is that they front up at these kind of drag races, and they get money for winning races or whatever. Nothing happens. There's no plot. There's no real sense that it's going anywhere. On their trip across America, they do meet a guy who, played by, the name has escaped me momentarily, it'll come back. I think he's just called after the name of his car, so nobody has a name.
Yeah.
There's a girl that gets in the car of one of them and ends up being part of the story as well, if there is a story. But yeah, it's really an existential road film directed by Monty Hellman, who made a lot of kind of strange movies. And yeah, it begins with these 2 guys, kind of, they don't talk much, you don't know much about them, you never do learn much about them. It finishes with the beginning of a new race where they've kind of, fronted up to this place and they're about to kind of compete. And the way the film ends is for the film to just burn up. The actual film, the celluloid itself just burns up. If you leave the old actual film, if you leave the light too long, it'll just disintegrate, and that's how it ends. So it doesn't even end.
Yeah.
And it's honestly one of the most, I think it's been spoken about as one of the only films ever made that is so purely existential. That if you don't understand existentialism, watch Tulane Blacktop and you'll get it.
Yeah.
It's because it's a very complex idea, but it's just like there's no path. The only path is what you make, and you can choose not to. You can choose anything you want. This idea of like this kind of existential angst about, you can do whatever you want. There's no real path anyone's on. Anyway, it's a really interesting film, and it used to be on my top 5. I maybe watched it too much, and maybe tried to introduce too many people to it who'd sit there after half an hour saying, "I'm bored, nothing's happening." I'm like, that's the point.
Yeah.
But yeah, but I do love that film. But I can't think of any other favourites. They just kind of... I do have embarrassing favourites. So I have films that I love in a million ways. Like songs that you love, I really love a lot of shitty songs, but I love them and I'll never not love them. I know they're terrible, they're pop, whatever. But I feel a bit like that. There's a film called Contact with Jodie Foster.
Oh, yeah.
It's
a classic.
Absolutely love that film.
Yeah.
I know it's got a few problems. I read the book by Carl Sagan. Carl Sagan's book is very different. The film itself has this kind of sort of subplot about the science versus religion kind of thing that goes on through it. Yeah. And it's often spoken about almost too obviously. That doesn't actually happen in the book, but I don't want to talk here about adaptation theory because it's too complicated. I think that probably in Hollywood at the time it was made in the 90s, there was probably not much appetite for a film that said there is no God, get over it. It was like, well, we need to make some concession to religion, so let's have Matthew McConaughey as a surfing preacher, whatever he was. But I do love that film. I also love the score. I think it's by Silvestri, which I think is fantastic. But yeah, it's honestly one of my favourite movies ever, and we'll watch it at least once a year just to remind myself how great it is. And it works as a nice companion piece, I think, for Interstellar.
Yeah. No, definitely.
It does, yeah, and you've got McConaughey again in that, playing a very different character, but, I guess a similar kind of story about a kind of fairly obsessed kind of female scientist, and I really think those are both great films.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I do love a lot of 90s movies, but Contact, I know, it's kind of that moment when, John Hurt just suddenly John Hurt, the character, I forget his name in it. Suddenly,
he's the rich
guy.
Yeah.
Suddenly, kind of has been secretly watching her, kind of making these pitches to all these different companies to kind of fund her research or whatever, and suddenly he just comes up with it. And I don't know. There's a whole lot of kind of funny little plot things that go on, but they need to be there, and I totally forgive it.
Yeah. I mean, like, one of my favourite films is Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. And, like...
Oh, that's great.
That was, like, for me, as, like, when I first watched it in my early teens, it was, like, I just loved the visual style. It was just such a fun film. I didn't think much about, the characters until I got to, like, uni, and I realised, oh, they're all bad people, except for, like, Knives Chow. She's, like, the only good-hearted person in the whole film.
That's so true, yeah.
And, like... The amount of times I see debates about that these days, where it's like, sometimes I'm a little afraid to say it's one of my favourite films. I'm also like, yeah, but I understand now how these people, like Scott Pilgrim's an arsehole. I get it, Like, I never, because there was a thing with my generation in particular who, like, when they watched that, when it came out, and then they were like, oh, I'm Scott Pilgrim, and they'd, like, kind of, like,
wow.
what's that thing where they make themselves the character in a way. Like, some girls did the same thing with, like, Ramona Flowers. They'd colour their hair. They'd be, like, kind of dicks to people, just, like, it became a thing where people wanted to be like those characters, and it's like the point is to not be, and that you don't want to be like those characters because they're bad people, and, like, they kind of learn to be better people by the end of the film, which is the point. And I'm like... It took me a long time to realize that, but, like, I never, like, identified with that. I'm like, I just find it cool because it's fun and it's a great movie.
It is kind of funny, isn't it, that people wanted to emulate those characters, given that it's really maintained its comic book origins in the way it was shot, the way it looked, like all that kind of stuff. And I suppose we can learn. It's not like we can't learn from comics. We can't. We can, but I suppose just kind of having that really obvious comic book aesthetic to it made it. I guess for some people, for me, it would take away some of the kind of real worldness about it. It'd be more like, oh, this is a comic and it's exploring these ideas about people who are assholes, and that's a perfect medium for that, and it's kind of crossed over into a film, and whatever. But some people kind of took it as took those role models to heart a little bit too much, maybe. Yeah. The other film I love, and I will not apologise for this, is Mad Max Fury Road, which
There's nothing of, like, that's, like, me and Guy adore that film.
I just love it.
Our friend hadn't seen it, and we were like, and this is because we do Discord calls every, like, Friday and Saturday night, so we just watch a movie or two. They hadn't seen it, and they're like, yeah, well, I'm interested in watching maybe one of the Mad Maxes, and, like, that's it, watching Fury Road right now. Yeah. Because it's, like, it's a banger. It's an absolutely beautiful film.
Yeah. I mean, you could watch the first one, the second one, forget the third one, and go straight to Fury Road.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen all of them, and my only grievance is the fact that after we watched it in cinema, my dad was like, yeah, it's kind of like the second film, but I prefer the second film. I'm like, but it's like, and I've watched them, like, there's similarities, sure, but it's also like, how about we just love both of them, because they're both really good films.
That's right. Let's not have favourites.
Like, the first one's interesting, it's not fantastic, and the third one is interesting, but not fantastic.
True.
But the second and Fury Road, like Road Warrior and Fury Road, are just
amazing. I mean, the first one is interesting. I went back and watched the first one again after Fury Road, because I thought, I really just want to see... I just want to see Mad Max before the big budget. I want to see how George Miller approached this, because I'd forgotten most of it. Yeah. So I went back and I watched it, and you can see he's got this way, this style, this strange kind of... I wish I could put my finger on what it is. The way people speak, the way he names his characters, that kind of slightly grotesque and slightly uncanny feel about everything. There's a scene I particularly remember where Max turns up. I think Max rolls up to some abandoned petrol station or a general store or something, and there's all these guys in this configuration kind of sitting, like they've put themselves against the kind of wall in this really strange And then they all sort of jump down, and you think, that is weird. Why would he do that? And then you look at the Doof Warrior and you're like, yeah, that's weird.
Yeah.
Like, he's weird. He's got these weird ways of kind of expressing ideas, and a weird way of kind of conceptualizing characters, to the point that it's quite disturbing and yet so enjoyable.
Yeah.
And I just love Fury Road, and I really was quite amused when all of those people that there was a whole lot of stuff on Reddit saying they ruined a perfectly good franchise because there's like Max is taking a back seat. It's all about Furiosa.
She's the main character.
She's the main character. It's called Mad Max.
She has the character arc. She has the journey. It's about her.
It's actually about
Max
Furiosa.
is just there.
Yeah.
And it's like, sometimes those are the better films where the main character of the franchise just kind of takes a backseat and is just there. Like, one of my favorite John Carpenter films is Big Trouble in Little China?
Oh yeah,
and
right.
The whole film, a lot of people didn't realize it, but the character of Jack Burton, played by Kurt Russell, he's not the main character.
Yeah.
He's the side character. He's just there, and things happen, and he has no impact on the plot at all. Things keep happening around him, and the other characters are doing everything, and he's just there. I mean, like, the best example is the final fight where he goes in with a gun and he shoots he shoots a few times and he gets knocked out for like half the fight. So he doesn't do anything. The only thing he does is like kill the bad guy at the very end, and that's something that's set up at the very start of the film from like his reflexes. So like they throw a knife and he grabs it and throws it back, and that's it. That's all he does in the whole film.
It is kind of interesting, isn't it, the way that we've been like primed in a way to understand the way a main character, or what we think a protagonist is going to be or do. And, you know, Hitchcock way back with Psycho really kind of, you know, challenged those ideas, because we think Marion Crane is perhaps going to be the you know, she gets killed off pretty early in the film. It's really not, it's about her, but she's gone for the rest of it. She's gone for the majority of the film. And yet that's, you know, it's kind of really interesting that we really need to broaden our minds a little bit sometimes when it comes to who is the character. Okay, it's called Mad Max Fury Road, but you know, Furiosa's the main, the protagonist, if you like, and Max is, as you said, he's just a side character. But
it's basically
my
just
God,
title character for the franchise and just the location.
People went crazy, ruining a perfectly good franchise. I remember that quote. It's like, you know, why is a woman now taking? Yeah, okay.
It's like, but
you've got some problems.
He just walks in on her story, sees it happen, helps out a bit, and then he goes home. Well, walks off into the sunset because it's like he doesn't have anything else to do.
That's right. You know? That's right.
I mean, I could see them making an argument now because they're making a prequel about her. I'm like, that I could understand, but it's like, because it's about her, but her name will be in the title, so that does make more sense.
Yes, that's right. When we call Mad Max 5.
Yeah.
It's a brilliant film. It's amazing, and every single time I watch it, I still get scared. I get scared because it's got the sound design in that film is so spectacular, because there's those moments where the rig is kind of, you know, racing across the desert or whatever, and someone looks and they see them coming, but you don't just see them, you hear them. And you hear that sound, those drums, the kind of the Doof Warrior, you hear that stuff. It actually puts shivers. I get goosebumps because it's so terrifying, because you have to imagine that was you in the rig, and you're kind of like, okay, we've got to beat this army of psychos, and not only that, they're playing music. That's their kind of battle cry, you know. That hearing that terrifies me every time I watch it. I just want to yell, move faster, 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 get away, they're coming. And then Miller will cut. You hear that noise, but then he cuts to the kind of in the thick of it, you know, with the kind of those kind of
you got
those
the
little
sweeping cameras going through the whole van. It's like, this is what they're up against.
And the cameras are they go past the guitarist and the flames kind of coming out, and then they goes to those guys all drumming, and you know, and then you kind of see those I think they call them the polecats that are kind of, it's just amazing. Like you cannot trust a single one of these people. They are all nutcases, and they are coming after you, and I just feel like the sound is amazing. Does an amazing job of really reinforcing that fear in me, but I will watch it as many times as I can.
No, I always
so great.
I mean, I've gone to the degree of, having watched it in cinema, bought the Blu-ray, bought the 4K, and then even bought the black and chrome steelbook edition, just so I could kind of check it out. Because black and chrome or black and white films became like weirdly popular in like 2016, 2017 film, where people would make like a black and white edit, like they did with Logan, the black and noir or whatever it was. And I never saw that one, but I watched part of black and chrome for Mad Max Fury Road, and I'm like, it's interesting. But then when you get to the Sandstorm, because the way they edit that is like, obviously everything's very red in the film, but then when you get to the Sandstorm, suddenly it's red, it's like has lightning strikes to blue, but then it also has cuts to it being in black and white, so it gives you all the different like color variations, and I'm like, I still prefer it in color. It just screams like how cool it is in color. Like I understand the like appeal for the black and chrome, and you know, there's a lot of great things about black and white, like even Parasite in black and white still looks really nice. So it's like, it's good, but I mean, I have it in color in 4K, and it just looks good, you know.
Amazing.
It's like some films if they're made in color, I don't need them to be in black and white.
Yeah.
So
I had I went and saw it with a friend when it was out in cinemas, at the Doncaster, you know, multiplex or whatever, and I was like, oh, that was amazing, and then I had a friend message me the next day saying, hey Kaz, do you want to go see Mad Max Fury Road? And I actually said, I already saw it yesterday, and then I went, what am I saying? Of course I do. And I went 2 days in a row. Yeah. So, and it was great, greater the second time. Yeah. If that's even possible.
Yeah, I mean, it is possible. Like, the first time we watched it, it's like the final week was in cinema, because like it took us till then to watch it, because we were just, I mean, I was in high school, I think, so it was like, you know, it takes a long time to get around to watching movies. And I watched it with my dad and my brother, and we liked it. But because like Blade Runner 2049 is my favorite film. And so, I mean, I still love the original. Like, I've got no diss for the original. Yeah. But like the first time we saw that, we saw it in the Books cinema, and we had the very back row of the cinema. Yeah. I couldn't hear half of what they were saying because it was just like all background noise and ambience and stuff, and it was wonderful. Yeah. Like you don't I didn't understand half of what the hell was happening in the movie, but then I saw it like a few weeks later at the Astor in 4K, and I was like on the top row, very very front, right in your face, and I was like, I understand everything and I absolutely adore it. Yeah. Like I didn't dislike it the first time I watched it, but like, and I've seen that film several times now because, you know, why not? It's 3 hours long, but I love it.
Yeah. Actually, another film I really love is Jaws, which is probably a little bit obvious, but I think that is, I don't love Spielberg much. I'm not a huge fan.
See, for me, I don't like Scorsese. I don't care that much for Scorsese. I like his films. I don't get.
I feel a bit like that too.
But I love Spielberg stuff. So
yeah, I like a lot of Spielberg stuff, and I love that. I know there's a whole like, almost his films have got all similar themes about them, especially a lot of that. Yeah, but a lot of his kind of stuff around kids and aliens and stuff like that. Yeah. But I do love Jaws. I think Jaws is a perfect film. Oh, yeah. In so many ways, it's just so fantastic. That he did interesting things in that film that I feel like he broke some rules, and I really like that he did that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's definitely one of my favorites of his. I mean, I grew up watching like Star Wars and Indiana Jones, and I never even realized that he directed Indiana Jones. Yeah. Like it took me till like I was in high school to realize he directed Indiana. Like I'd known him for like, again, Jaws and Close Encounters. Yeah. But then I started getting introduced to more of his films, so I watched like stuff like Schindler's List and Saving Private Ryan. I realized this guy could do anything. And even watching West Side Story last year, it was one of my favorite films of last year.
Really?
Yeah, and I watched it a week after watching the original, which I'd never seen before. And I adored both of them, but for like completely different reasons. And I really liked the 2021 version.
Okay, I haven't seen it, and I kind of decided I wouldn't, but you might have changed my mind.
It's interesting, like, because you've seen the original. Yeah. So it's basically, like, I love the original for its kind of Technicolor style to it. The Technicolor in the film is absolutely gorgeous, and like it adds this kind of like dreamlike reality to it that makes me believe more into the relationship of Tony and Maria. And like, it's a great film. It's interestingly done. The music's interesting. Not perfect in terms of everyone singing, but I'm like, I don't really care. It's a musical. Yeah. I'm not always big on that kind of stuff anyway. Yeah. Unless it's like, Les Miserables, and it's like, I'm just not even going to bother with that kind of shit. But then with but with the modern adaptation, it's like, what if everything was kind of more realistic and grounded? But like, and it for me takes away from the romantic elements of it because I don't really believe their relationship, despite that they actually develop it more. But the girl who plays Maru is brilliant. Ansel Elgort is like the weakest link of the whole film because when you're introduced to him, it's like, oh yeah, he just got out of prison. I'm like, he just looked like he got out of primary school. What are you talking about? Like, he's just too baby-faced to look like he would have almost killed someone.
I saw the trailer and I kind of had that thought about a lot of it.
And he's also like the worst singer of the film, but like it has some great sequences and it's more like the original musical. So like it has a part where they sing about Officer Kripke, and it's probably my favorite film of the scene. It's absolutely hilarious. They're all just mucking about in the police station, and just the way he directs it is really nice. Like. I saw it twice in the cinema, like 3 days apart, just because my mate wanted to see it, and I was like, and I'd seen it on the Sunday that came out on Boxing Day. I saw it 2 days later after seeing The Matrix. So, yeah, that was interesting. But yeah.
I feel like I want to mention a female director who I really love, because I don't think there's enough talk about the contribution of women. And I love Catherine Bigelow. I love her films. I love Zero Dark 30. I know that's controversial because of what it depicts, what it's actually about. But regardless of whether, how you feel about all that stuff, I really just love the way she tells that story.
Yeah.
I think it's an amazing film. And The Hurt Locker is also amazing.
I haven't actually watched any of those two yet.
Oh.
I'm not big on watching like American 9/11 stuff and like stuff that's like evolved from there. Like, I'm interested to watch them eventually, especially because, well, firstly because female directors in particular, but like, it's because which one was it that won against Avatar for like Best Picture? I think it was.
Oh, I can't remember.
I think it was The Hurt Locker, but they both won really. They both did really well, like awards wise. I know that one of them beat one of the two. I think it was The Hurt Locker beat. Avatar. And even like it's a kind of film that like my dad would be like, who the hell talks about like The Hurt Locker anymore? I'm like, Americans and basically just them, because it's like it's so relating to them. Like it's about America fighting evil terrorism and stuff, and but there's there's obviously more personal conflicts, say like stuff from American Sniper and whatever.
I think there's more. I mean, her films are more about. I like that they don't really take a stance so much on the 9/11 stuff. It's not really about that. It's really about the way she does these kinds of portraits, if you like, of these kind of people who have been really used as fodder by the American government. You go over there and you can.
See, now that I can get behind.
Yeah, you can. You're a bomb diffuser.
Like something like Jarhead, where it's like,
right.
Like they want to fight and they want to kill, and then nothing happens, and it's like sucked in.
Yeah, right, right.
I mean, at least you don't have PTSD and you lose a limb or whatever, but at the same time.
But it does problematize that stuff. It doesn't. It's not about. Holding up the American kind of soldier as some kind of god. It's really about the country that we live in is doing this to people, and this is how they respond to that. Yeah. And I think Zero Dark 30 has also a whole lot of that too, because it's really about the relationships between the people rather than the whether or not they're doing the right thing. Yeah. So she kind of is quite neutral. I think it's just her incredible storytelling techniques, the amazing way that she creates these characters that become very relatable. They're flawed, but they're still really interesting characters. None of them are perfect, and it's not like America, fuck yeah, none of it is. It's never about that. Yeah. And of course, I'm referring to Team America, which one student said to me once, "What is that?" And I was like, "Shame on you." As politically incorrect as that film now is, you got to know the song, because it's the whole point is that it's a joke about America. Yeah, it's but anyway,
it's a parody of the country and
for sure. Yeah.
I weirdly can't think of like a favorite female director off the top of my head, which.
It's sad, isn't it? Yeah, I know. Yeah.
I mean, but the thing is, it's like, I've obviously seen a lot of like films by female directors, even like people of color as well. Yeah. Like, I guess just life. My film life is so saturated of just white guys. Yeah. It's like, it's not like they're making bad films, You know, like I've seen a good variety of, I'd say probably more person of color films, especially because like I watch a lot of Asian cinema with like Jackie Chan films and martial arts and whatever. But it's like
all great.
They all have such interesting styles to them. Like I think because I'm subscribed to the Criterion Channel, and like they have a lot of like 70s black exploitation films. So like I've seen a good variety of those. I mean, most of them are still, well, they're all still like mostly male directed anyway. But like you know. They're male. They
broke
black,
a few boundaries though. A lot of them, like Foxy Brown and I'm trying to think of them, Cleopatra Jones, and you know, putting these women, these black women, in these kind of these roles, you know, where they were kind of kicking ass. I think they broke a lot of boundaries. Yeah. Even though they were exploitation, but whatever.
You know, it's like I can understand because again, I know people who have the argument of like, oh well, you know, black exploitation is bad for black cinema because like it, you know, reinforces stereotypes and whatever, and it puts them in a bad light because it gives them these like cartoony performances. I'm like, yeah, but that's all were allowed to make.
That's right.
If they were allowed to do anything, so it's like, you know, sometimes you get what you're given.
I also think those directors did actually.
They still did something more than they were allowed to. Like,
they did, and that's what's interesting about them is that they did challenge a lot of that stuff. Yeah. It's almost kind of implicit though, but they still did it, and I think that's what everyone has to remember about that stuff. Yeah. Is that they were challenging a lot of those stereotypes at the same time as, you know, I guess leaning into them, but then challenging them at the same time. Yeah.
What do you think about like the current, I guess, a film slate of the past like 10 years, and how it's going? Like, you know, the compounds of like Marvel. Okay. And then, like A24.
Yeah, I have to admit that I've been forced to watch a lot of Marvel films. I didn't mind early Marvel films actually. Yeah. But I've not kept up so much with the universe, and I've had to watch a lot of that stuff just because, you know, we've shown a lot of them in screen studies. I really like Into the Spider-Verse. I really love that. Yeah. I like some of the old Spider-Man movies actually from the 90s. I think
the Sam Raimi ones.
I don't mind some of them.
2000s,
the early 2000s. Yeah.
From 2002 onwards. Yeah.
And I really quite
9/11.
Yeah. I really quite liked a lot of. I like some of the Netflix ones. I really love Daredevil. I think I watched Jessica Jones the first season. I think I could have lost a bit of. Yeah. And Punisher, I was a little disappointed in because Punisher's meant to be far more brutal than he actually is. But whatever. I don't mind those. But in terms of like, you know, the whole entire MCU, I'm not across it, and I am often having to ask students in class like, can you explain? Because last year I did this thing where I was like, someone mentioned a film and I was like, I'm not really into Marvel that much. And they were like, it's DC. And I went, see? That just goes to show.
No, it's the same. Like my partner's the same. Like she's never seen a Batman film, and she didn't even know that they were in two different like brands. And I'm like because I grew up on comic book films, so like, you know, watching stuff as early as the original Sam Raimi Spider-Man films, which I still absolutely adore, because it's not just that they're superhero films, it's like they're so isolated as to by themselves, so each film has its arc and whatever, and they just build off the last one. They've got an amazing style, because I love Sam Raimi's films. But then like getting into like the MCU and stuff, for me, great time for it to come out because I was a teenager. So like I could go out and watch this stuff, and watching the Avengers in cinema, it was absolutely fun. And then for me, it personally concluded with like Endgame back in, that was again 2019. But it was like, because for me, it's like 10 years of this shit. It's a long time. Yeah. And like I'm tired of these movies. Like,
and it's right.
And like I don't like looking at like, oh, I'm like this big film nerd, so I'm like I prefer art house and whatever. No, it's like I just don't care about watching the same blockbuster every goddamn 3 months. It's just tiresome, and it's just.
To be honest, I do prefer the.
I mostly use them as social occasions.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and I actually do prefer the Batman films anyway. Yeah. I actually really like them. I'm not, and this will sound terrible, I'm not a massive fan of the Chris Nolan stuff though. Like I kind of like the I really love the Tim Burton one, and I know that there's something about it. There's something kind of sweet and and comic-y, and before it went dark, you know, like it's like, oh, it's gone dark. But I quite like that. I think Jack Nicholson was in his element, having a whole lot of fun.
Yeah.
You know, he could have phoned it in, but he didn't. He just was like, I'm just going to make the most of this ridiculous situation I'm in and make it ridiculous and whatever. Yeah, I quite like that. So yeah, and I do prefer that. But yeah, I haven't kept up. I have not kept up, and I don't intend to.
Yeah.
There's so many other things I'd rather watch. So,
yeah, exactly. Like, you know, I could. Like, I remember because we even saw the Spider-Man No Way Home. I saw it twice in cinema, and it was just, it killed me the second time, because I'm like, the first time, you know, again, blockbuster, turn your brain off, have fun. Oh, look, nostalgia, because characters from films from 20 years ago are reprising their roles, even though they look old and tired, and they clearly just doing it for the pay. You know, it's like, especially like Tobey Maguire coming back as Spider-Man, it's iconic, and it's like, that man clearly looks like he just got divorced, because he had, and messy
divorce. Yeah.
You know, so it's like, there's like, watching it the first time, I'm like, you know, it's fun. I didn't mind it. I enjoyed it because it's just, you know, but it's, you know, the second time, which was like maybe about 2 weeks later, because I caught up with some like old primary school friends who hadn't seen it. One of them who works at the cinema, and he was waiting for weeks to see it, and he didn't get the time to until after Christmas. And it was just meh. I was just like, yeah. I mean, like, seeing it, it's films like that, say, with like even Avengers Endgame, which I think I prefer in terms of like as an audience thing, like seeing everyone go absolutely crazy for these characters getting their arcs completed after 10 goddamn movies and shit. It's like, I'm like, imagine that in like an hour and a half. How cool that would have been, you know? Like, and my big pet peeve at the end of 2021 was like, the majority of the films I watched, outside of most of them being sequels and franchise stuff, they were all over 2 hours long. And like, I was really tired throughout all of December, and it was not fun to like, I mean, like watching Spider-Man twice, that's almost 2.5 hours. Then you've got, I watched West Side Story twice, another 2.5 hours. Matrix Resurrections, 2.5 hours. The only one I really, really enjoyed, despite its runtime, which I think it was still like a solid 2 hours, was Licorice Pizza. And that was like my favorite film of last year, which I watched like the second last day of last year. I'm like, I love it. It's the best. That's just because I really like Paul Thomas Anderson films. So it's like, it's interesting looking at how, because I go on Twitter a lot and see a lot of people talking about films and whatever, and how much of a conversation piece it was that people talking about, like, what happened to 90-minute films? You know, and a lot of people, because it's like, oh, what happened to mid-tier 90-minute films where it's like, you know, $50 to $100 million budgets, it's not too expensive, it's just a regular like comedy or whatever that peaked in like the 2000s. And I'm like, you kind of still get that in the superhero genre if you look for it. And like Venom Let There Be Carnage was 91 minutes long.
Wow.
And it's a rom-com about a guy having a breakup with his parasite. It's like, you know, I adore that film, because it's like, I don't mind the first film. It's not great. It's a bad version of a romantic comedy. The only fun part is when it tries to be a superhero film in the middle, but then it becomes too much of a superhero CGI fest at the end. It's just yucky. But the second one nails it. Like, a lot of people don't like these films. They do well at the box office, same as like the Fast and Furious films.
Furious, yep.
I love the Fast and Furious films. I hated them for years, and then as of the past like 2 years, I got into those. I got into the Resident Evil films, like stuff that's just like, it's just fun schlock. And I'm like, but it's modern, so it's got big budget, so it can probably look with like shitty CGI, but it's still so fun because it's just over the top. I'm like, I love that kind of stuff.
There's a place for that, though. There's always been a place for that. There's an old film called Sullivan's Travels from the 1940s or 50s. And I can never remember names when I want to drag them out of my brain. I can't remember the name of the director anyway. He was a famous director whose name I forget.
They're all famous.
But yeah, Sullivan's Travels is actually a film about a film director who realizes that he's making comedies, and he thinks, oh look, I feel like I want to make something more serious. I feel like all I'm doing is kind of making fluff films for people, and I want to do something. So he goes on the road, and he I think he ends up in jail, and he ends up all these things happen to him because he feels like he needs a bit of life experience, and he wants to do a serious film, and then he ends up being put in prison, and he's in prison, and one of his films, the director in the film, is being shown to a mess hall of prisoners, and they're all rolling around the aisles, laughing, loving every minute of it. And he looks around and he says, "Oh." He thinks to himself, okay, there is actually a place for these kinds of movies. It doesn't have to be serious, turgid stories about, trauma. Fun movies. There's a place for spectacle. There's a place for fun. There's a place for comedy. There's a place for kind of all those films that might not teach you anything, but actually are just great entertainment.
Yeah. I mean, some films are just, here's a wacky idea, let's go along with it. Like a lot of M. Night Shyamalan films, as much as they became about the twist, it's like a lot of them are just, here's a wacky idea, let's see what we can do with it. And his latest one, Old, which a lot of people didn't like, I'm like, me and Guy loved it. It's like,
I haven't seen it.
What if these people are on a beach and they become old while they're on the beach, like just rapidly age, and it's every idea you can get, like the kids turn into adults, one of them gets pregnant, they have a baby, there's so much insane stuff that you can do, but it's also like how it's shot is so insane. Like if you just look at, just like, I know a lot of people criticize like Shyamalan's dialogue in most modern films. I'm like, yeah, sure, it's tacky, but it's like it gets the point across. You understand what's happening like straight away because it's all there, and there's still setups and payoffs. It's still really well directed. It's just sometimes they're just wacky ass films, and it's like, why not?
Well, you don't only have to watch those movies. You can go and source all these other films that are not wacky and with bad dialogue. There's lots of so much choice.
Yeah, so it's like, there's still stuff. Whilst Marvel might have its slate and Disney in general might still have its, hey, look, we have all the money, so we're going to make all the bad films. It's like, yeah, but then there's stuff like, I don't know, like Titane from last year, or Titane, the French body horror film, which is just like insane. Like I've said this a few times in some videos in the past, like that's the one film of last year that I threw up during, because I got like, after my first COVID shot, I had like low blood pressure or something. I don't know. It was just like made me really nauseous, and then like just made me throw up. And like that was after my first shot. And then like skipped many months later, and we get to, I'm watching this film, and I just start feeling really sick.
Oh, so my God,
and
it
I left
triggered
the cinema, threw up, came back and finished the film.
Wow.
And I like left during like the most interesting part, because it's where the main character goes and kills a bunch of people in like the goofiest way. And it happened to be on YouTube, so I luckily watched it like a few hours later when I got home. I'm like, thank God this one scene happens to be on YouTube. But
Did you feel sick again?
No, I don't know what the hell it was. So maybe it's just like dehydration or something.
Maybe.
I mean, the film's pretty, it's decently grotesque, and it gets kind of, it kind of hits a peak of being grotesque, and then just kind of teeters out to become a really interesting like character journey while still having some, she has sex with a car, so she gets pregnant, and it like becomes like transforms her body in a way, and it's just very weird, but it's that's a director I like. She's I don't remember her. She's a French director. She did that in Raw a few years back. Which is
I know who you're talking about, but again forgotten.
It's like Julia de Kumabal. I don't know. I'm not good with French
I love
names.
your French, by the way. It's great.
It's all about the vowels.
You could walk around Paris and get away with being French.
Yeah, but
it's amazing.
Like I liked her previous films. Like she's a director I'm interested in. So there's at least one film or director I can say that I like. I like a lot of them, but I just don't remember the names all the time.
Yeah.
I'm usually pretty bad with names.
So am I, clearly. I can't remember any names.
Well, sometimes just when you wanted to, it's like, fuck, I'm on video, I need to prove myself.
So frustrating, I know.
So it's,
I know.
But yeah, I really like her film, because I love French cinema, so like I grew up with Amélie, and then like that's also quite like surreal. Yeah. But then like going from that to the extent of, hey, here's a film about a vegan student who becomes a cannibal, a medical student. It's like, that's kind of weird. Yeah. French cinema, they're doing some crazy ass shit, and I love it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. So I think cinema still has a long way to go. I mean, I understand that most art house these days is pretty much like A24 or some big directors who just make whatever the hell they want to. Yeah. But yeah, so. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah.
Let's see what happens. I mean, a lot of film production is shut down because of the
raging pandemic,
the global pandemic. Yes. It has. You hear about the production of The Handmaid's Tale or something. The kind of that was filmed, the last season that was filmed all during COVID, and the kinds of, you know, things they have to do to get these things actually done, made, you know, it's crazy. So it's changed the way people film, it's changed the way, how many people you can have on a set, it's changed a whole lot of stuff. So, but I guess people are getting around it. I mean, originally there were all these kind of ideas, oh, it's going to be the end of cinema, we'll never get any more content, but that hasn't happened. I mean, there's people still making stuff, we're still getting, maybe the volume is not the same, but it'll probably get back to that at some point, and it'll be fine.
I think the only struggles for us in Australia for that is like, because in Victoria with lockdowns, it's like when we've been able to view the movies, and it's gone to the point where, again, last year in like November through December, every week I was having to watch a new movie because they were all coming out in December because we've had so many delays. Like, I mean, some were being released, like Spider-Man and Matrix and whatever. So it's like, there were movies like that, but there were so many movies in those last 2 months that I was just forcing myself to watch because I'm like, I won't be able to watch these if we go in another lockdown or like because of all these lockdowns. I missed Wes Anderson's new film because I wasn't able to watch it in cinema because I was too busy with work, having a social life, watching all the other movies. Comes out on Blu-ray next week, so it doesn't really matter. So it's like, you know, and I'm probably bound to watch it anyway, so I'll just buy that. But yeah, so it's like, it's interesting. But I think we'll get, I mean, like, the amount of money that, like, Spider-Man made, for example, which is like, I don't know, probably half to over $1 billion.
Yeah.
Like, I know it's still a Marvel movie, a big budget one, but it's like, it still shows people want to see the stuff in cinemas.
For sure.
Even if it's exclusive. Like, some films probably shouldn't always be exclusive to cinemas, like, you know, say, HBO Max or whatever other streaming service. But, yeah, I don't know.
I don't think it's as pessimistic as people were originally talking about.
I mean, it gives you more time to, if there's nothing out, it gives you more time to watch literally anything else. Like, the amount of times now I've been able to watch TV shows, like I spent most of last year watching TV shows that I'd bought in DVD because there was nothing, you know, I couldn't go out to the cinemas most of the time. So I'm like, screw it, I'll watch all the Buffy now, you know. So I did that. I spent most of last year watching Buffy, Sopranos.
I feel like that's a t-shirt, Julian. Yeah. Screw it. I'm going to watch all the Buffy now. ...
Yeah.
I love
so
that.
Like, you know, and I even watched that to the, like, in the release order, so I was watching Buffy and Angel concurrently.
Wow.
So I was getting around to the story arcs. So, yeah, it was, you know, but then I'm like, it's given me new ways to hang out with friends, because, like, I don't really like going outside most times anymore, mostly because of just general anxiety of death is anywhere. Yay.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I've got, you know, they've got stuff like Discord and voice calls and stuff. So I'm like, me and my mates, like I said, just Friday, Saturday nights, we just get together. Just, even if it's just two of us, we just choose a random show or a movie or a bunch of YouTube videos and just go from there. Like, it's because of my mates that I ended up watching Neon Genesis Evangelion. Yeah. And I watched most of that last year. Got to like episode 17 and only finished it last week, because I just stopped watching it all of a sudden, and then me and Guy watched like 2 episodes, and then suddenly I binged the rest of the show, watched the movies, and then watched the new versions of the movies with him on you know, Prime and whatever. So it's like, yeah, you know, it's not bad.
We're finding different ways to watch things, but it's cool.
Yeah.
I think I might have to go soon, Julian. I think that's all right.
No, I think we've...
Is that enough?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, we've
covered a lot of ground.
Story of
David Lynch, favourite movies. Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah, more of a general conversation. I think that's kind of...
Is that kind of what you wanted?
Yeah, because I'm like, that's why when I was thinking of like ideas for what we should talk about, like all the questions, I'm like, I mean, outside of just asking what got you into film and what you study here, what you teach here, it's like, it's not really much else outside of David Lynch. So I'm like, then we just talk about films.
Yeah, I mean, I had no doubt that we'd be able to fill an hour at least.
Yeah. But yeah, so I guess we'll just do a wrap up. Yeah.
Sure. Sorry. Look at me trying to get out of the chair already. No, it's fine. Yeah.
But no, this was really fun. So thanks for your time in this.
Thanks for asking me. Yeah. Yeah. And lucky we were able to find an empty lecture theatre. So yeah.
Well, luckily after 6 months of trying to film this. So,
yeah.
You know,
it has been a long time.
It has been,
interrupted by multiple lockdowns and me getting COVID and you being in close contact and whatever. Yeah. But we did it. But we definitely did it.
Yeah.
And I hope,
despite the odds.
I hope people enjoy listening to us crap on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Excellent. Well,
Thanks, Julian.
Thanks for joining.
See you later.
Thanks for watching.
Bye.
Well, that's the end. Thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed, feel free to like, share, and subscribe for more. You can check out more videos on the side there eventually. Yeah, I know this is nice. I mean, it's been a while since we've seen each other, so it's good to have a kind of a chat like this. And you know, as you saw in the video, we do chat like this quite a lot and in a lot of detail. It's always good to have a friend like that. So yeah, hope you've enjoyed. If you want to check out more interviews, there obviously are some. Yeah, outside of that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Adios.